My family kicked me out for refusing to give my lazy brother $37,000. I worked 4 years since age 15 to save that money. But when I left with all my savings and blocked them, they were left speechless, and now they're defaming me to everyone. I'm 19 years old. I work 2 jobs while studying at university, and about 2 weeks ago I left my parents' house, or rather they kicked me out. Honestly, because I refused to give them $37,000 that I've saved over 4 years. Yes, you read that right. 4 years of my life working like crazy to save that money, and they wanted me to give it to my older brother so he could rent an apartment because he's basically useless and can't hold a job for more than 3 months straight. But anyway, let's start from the beginning because this story is long and complicated, and I need to get it out of my system. When I was 15, I got my first job at a convenience store near my school. Nothing glamorous. You know, restocking products on shelves, cleaning floors, working the register when it got busy. I was making like $8 an hour, working 15 hours a week because that was the maximum I could handle with school. And from the first paycheck, I decided I was going to save as much as I could because I had this idea, almost like an obsession, of starting my own business someday. I didn't know exactly what kind of business, but I knew I needed startup capital, and I knew nobody was going to hand it to me. My parents aren't rich. I mean, we lived okay, lower middle class, I guess, but we definitely didn't have extra money to go around financing my entrepreneurial dreams. My brother Jason, who's 5 years older than me, was always the favorite. Always. For as long as I can remember, Jason could do whatever he wanted, and my parents would justify it, support it, give him everything. When Jason got bad grades, it was because the teachers didn't understand him. When I got bad grades, it was because I was lazy and didn't try hard enough. When Jason crashed my dad's car at 17, my parents said it was an accident that could happen to anyone. When I scratched the garage door with my bike at 12, they grounded me for a month. You see what I mean? It was always like that. And I accepted it because, well, what else could I do? I was just a kid and then a teenager trying to survive in that weird family dynamic. Jason graduated high school with mediocre grades, didn't go to college because he said it wasn't his thing. Which is fine, college isn't for everyone. But the problem is he didn't do anything else either. He lived at my parents' house, worked temporary jobs here and there, never lasted more than a few months at each place because there was always a problem. The boss was an idiot, co-workers were jealous, the schedule didn't work for him, there was always an excuse. Meanwhile, there I was, working constantly, going to school, maintaining a decent GPA, saving every penny I could. When I turned 16, I got a second job on weekends at a fast food restaurant. It was horrible, smelled like grease all the time. I'd come home with my clothes soaked in sweat and oil, but it paid $10 an hour plus occasional tips when I worked the drive-through area, adding both jobs I was making like $1,200, $1,300 a month, and I was saving about $800. I lived with my parents, so I didn't pay rent or food. My only real expense was my phone that I paid for myself because my parents said if I wanted a smartphone, I had to pay for it myself, while Jason had the latest iPhone that my parents bought him, obviously. At 17, I started working at an electronics store. I left the convenience store job because this one paid $14 an hour, and I kept the restaurant one on weekends. I also started doing occasional freelance work, helping people with their computers, basic repairs, software installation, that kind of stuff. It wasn't a lot of extra money, but it added up. By the time I graduated high school, I had like $20,000 saved, and I felt incredibly proud of myself, you know. I was 18 years old and had managed to put together that amount. Working and sacrificing hangouts with friends, buying clothes at thrift stores, basically living like a hermit to be able to save. I started college with a partial scholarship, not full, but it helped, and I kept working. I left the restaurant job because I couldn't manage the hours with classes, but I kept the electronics store one and increased my freelance work. I also started tutoring high school students in math and science because it turns out I was good at teaching, and they paid $20 an hour. By my second year of college, I had like $32,000 saved, and I was so close to my goal of $40,000 I could feel it. Jason, meanwhile, was still at my parents' house. Now he was 23 years old, didn't work consistently, spent most of his time playing video games or hanging out with his friends. My parents supported him completely, gave him money for gas, to go out, for whatever he needed, and he accepted it like it was his right. I sometimes tried not to feel resentful, but it was hard, like really hard, because there I was, killing myself working and studying, while he just lazed around living life without a care. About 3 months ago, Jason came home all excited, saying he had found the perfect apartment. It was a place in an expensive area of the city, like way above what any normal person could afford with a part-time job, but Jason was convinced it was his destiny to live there, or something like that. The apartment cost $2,000 a month in rent, and they asked for 2 months' deposit, plus the first month, so $6,000 to move in. Jason didn't have that money, obviously. I think at that point he had like $300 in his bank account, if that, and my parents didn't have it available in cash either. I thought that would be the end of it, that Jason would look for something more affordable, or that my parents would tell him he needed to get a stable job first, but no. Turns out they had another plan. One night, it was a Thursday, I think, my parents asked me to sit down with them in the living room. Jason was there too, sprawled on the couch with that satisfied look he always had when he knew he was going to get his way. My mom started with her all sweet and manipulative voice saying, "We need to talk to you about something important," and I already knew it wasn't going to be anything good, because that voice always preceded a ridiculous request. My dad got straight to the point. He said, "We know you've been saving money for years, and we're very proud of your dedication and hard work," which sounded good until he added, "But your brother needs help now and family helps each other?" I felt like a knot in my stomach because I already knew where this was going. My mom continued saying that Jason had found a wonderful apartment that would finally allow him to become independent and start his adult life for real, but that he needed money for the deposit and the first few months of rent while he got a stable job. The amount they mentioned was $37,000, literally almost all my savings. I sat there trying to process what I had just heard. Like, were they seriously asking me to give my brother 4 years of my life in the form of money when he had never worked consistently for anything? I asked them why specifically $37,000 if the apartment only needed $6,000 to move in. And my dad explained that the rest was so Jason could support himself for the first 6 months without worrying about money while he looked for work and got established. I did a quick mental calculation. 37,000 minus 6,000 deposit leaves 31,000. Divided by 6 months is like $5,000 a month for Jason to live on. More than what I was making, working 2 jobs and studying full-time. I told them no, simple and direct, no. That money was for my future, to start my business, to have a financial cushion, for my life. I had worked too hard for too long to just hand it over to someone who didn't even appreciate the value of work and effort. My mom immediately started with the guilt trip, saying, how could I be so selfish, that Jason was my older brother and I should want to help him. That when she was young, her family always supported each other without asking for anything in return. My dad got more aggressive, said that while I lived under his roof, I was going to follow his rules, and that part of those rules was supporting the family when someone needed help. Jason didn't say anything during all this. He just sat there with his arms crossed, like this whole thing was a waste of time, and I was a minor obstacle on his path to his dream apartment. I tried to reason with my parents. I explained all the sacrifice I had made, the hours working, the things I had missed, the sleepless nights studying after double shifts, all to be able to save that money. I told them that Jason could look for a cheaper apartment, get a job first, save his own money. My mom interrupted me, saying, I didn't understand how hard it had been for Jason to find his way, that not everyone is as ambitious and focused as me, that I needed to have more empathy. The conversation went in circles for like 2 hours, them pushing and me refusing, until finally my dad said to think about it during the week and we'd talk again on Sunday. I went to my room feeling like I had been run over by a truck. I couldn't believe my own parents were asking me this, basically demanding it, as if my money was also theirs just because I was their son and lived in their house. The week that followed was absolutely horrible. My mom gave me disappointed looks every time we crossed paths in the house, made passive-aggressive comments about how selfish today's youth had become, how in her day family was always first. My dad just didn't talk to me, which in a way was worse than my mom's comments. Jason didn't speak to me either, but I could feel his resentment. Every time we were in the same room, he started telling our parents that I had always been jealous of him, that I was probably happy to see him fail. Pure lies, but they believed everything as always. My friends at college noticed something was wrong. I was distracted in classes. I didn't participate in conversations like I normally did. I told my best friend what was happening and he was shocked. He told me that was completely insane, that it was my money, and nobody had the right to demand it from me, much less to finance my brother's laziness. He offered to let me stay at his apartment if things got really bad. He had a sofa bed and said I could be there as long as I needed. Sunday came, and we had another family meeting. This time the tone was different, more serious, more threatening. My dad started saying they had been thinking a lot about the situation and had come to a conclusion. I had two options: give Jason the money and continue being part of the family, or refuse, and I'd have to look for another place to live. A clear and direct ultimatum. My mom added that they didn't want it to come to this, but I was forcing their hand with my selfishness. That I had to understand that sometimes in life, you have to make sacrifices for the people you love. I asked them if they were really kicking me out of the house for not giving them my money, if they were really choosing Jason's comfortable lifestyle over my education and future. My dad said I had it all wrong, that they weren't choosing Jason over me, that they were simply trying to do right by their oldest son who needed help, and that I was being immature and selfish by not wanting to contribute. I reminded him that I was 19 years old, that I was still in college, that I was also his son and also needed support, but he just said that I was clearly doing fine on my own, considering all the money I had saved, that Jason was the one who really needed help right now. Jason finally spoke, said something like, "Look, brother, I don't know why you're making this so difficult. It's just money. You can save more. But I need this now. It's my chance to finally do something with my life." The irony of him telling me it's just money, when he had never seriously worked to earn his own money, was almost comical. I responded that if he really wanted to do something with his life, he should start by getting a job and supporting himself like the rest of functional adults in the world. My dad gave me until Friday to decide, 5 more days of this unbearable tension. During those days, the situation in the house was even worse. They practically didn't talk to me except to remind me of the deadline or to make more comments about my supposed selfishness. I called my friend and confirmed that I was probably going to need that couch. I also started discreetly packing my most important things: personal documents, my laptop, essential clothes, things with sentimental value. Thursday night. One day before the deadline, I was lying in my bed, unable to sleep, thinking about the whole situation. Part of me considered giving in, giving them the money just to keep the peace and not lose my family. But another part of me, the stronger and more rational part, I knew that if I gave in now, they were going to keep doing this to me for the rest of my life. There would always be another Jason crisis that needed my money. Another problem I'd have to solve by sacrificing my own well-being. I was also thinking about the 4 years of hard work, all the things I had missed, how unfair it all was. Friday, I came home after classes. My parents and Jason were waiting for me in the living room. My dad asked what my final decision was. I told them I wasn't going to give them the money, that it was my savings for my future and Jason needed to learn to fend for himself. My mom started crying, saying she couldn't believe her own son was so cruel and heartless, that I was breaking her heart. My dad stood up and said, "Fine, then you have 1 hour to pack your things and get out of my house. You're no longer welcome here." I went up to my room with my hands shaking, not from fear but from pure adrenaline and anger, and started putting my things in suitcases and boxes. I had more stuff than I thought. 4 years living in one place accumulates a lot of things, but I focused on the essentials. Clothes, important documents, my laptop and electronic equipment, some family photos that now seem tragically ironic. It took me like 2 hours instead of 1, but my parents didn't come up to rush me. I think part of them didn't believe I was actually going to leave. I went down the stairs dragging 2 large suitcases and a box. My parents were still in the living room. Jason was gone, probably in his room playing video games without a care in the world. My mom saw me and started crying again, asking if I was really leaving, if I was really going to destroy our family over money. I told her I wasn't the one destroying anything, that they were the ones who gave the ultimatum, who decided that giving Jason money was more important than supporting my education and future. My dad said nothing, just stood there with his arms crossed and a hard face. I called my friend and he arrived like 20 minutes later, helped me load my stuff into his car. Before leaving, I stood at the door and looked at my parents one last time. Part of me hoped they would say something, that they would apologize or at least admit this was crazy, but they said nothing. I closed the door and left. We drove in silence to my friend's apartment. I couldn't fully process what had just happened. I kept expecting to wake up and realize it had been a horrible nightmare. The first few days at my friend's apartment were weird. He was incredibly generous and patient with me, gave me space when I needed it, and company when I didn't want to be alone. The sofa bed wasn't very comfortable, but it was better than being in that toxic house. About a week after I left, I got a message from Jason. It wasn't an apology or anything like that. It was basically a wall of text telling me I had ruined his opportunity to finally be independent, that because of me, he couldn't get the apartment he wanted now, that he had always suspected I hated him, and now he had confirmation, that he hoped I was happy to have ruined his life. I didn't even respond. Blocked his number immediately. I realized I needed to protect my money legally, in case my parents or Jason tried something weird like lawsuits or claiming it somehow. I don't know. I was paranoid after everything that had happened. I made an appointment with a lawyer who offered free consultations for students at the university. Explained the whole situation to him. He told me the money was legally mine, 100%, that it had been earned by my work and was in an account in my name, that nobody could touch it without my permission. He recommended I change all my banking passwords and make sure nobody else had access to my accounts, which I did immediately. About 2 weeks after I left, I got a better job offer at a tech company. It was a part-time position, but paid $22 an hour with the possibility of working remote sometimes. Between that job and my tutoring, I was making enough to start looking for my own place. I found a small studio near campus. It wasn't much, like really small, with a tiny kitchenette and a bathroom that had seen better days. But it was mine. It was going to be my space, where nobody could demand anything from me or give me ultimatums. During that time, my parents tried to contact me several times, messages saying they wanted to talk, that things had gotten out of control, that we could resolve this as a family. But there was never a real apology. They never admitted they had been wrong. They just wanted me to come back and probably give them the money after all. Jason also tried to contact me a couple times with nicer messages, saying he missed me and things weren't the same without me, at home. But he never apologized for his part in all this, for giving my parents the idea in the first place or for supporting them when they kicked me out. About a week ago, a family friend contacted me, someone who had known my parents for years. He told me he had heard a very different version of the story of what happened, that my parents were telling everyone I had abandoned them for no reason, that I had become selfish and materialistic since I started making money, that I had turned my back on my family when they needed me most. Apparently, they were doing a whole victim show, receiving sympathy from friends and extended family who didn't know the real truth. The family friend believed me when I explained my version. He knew the family dynamic, had seen how they treated Jason versus how they treated me. I decided I wasn't going to spend more energy trying to correct the false narratives my parents were spreading. People who really know me know what I'm like. No, I wouldn't abandon my family without a very valid reason. I blocked my parents and Jason's numbers. I can't keep receiving their manipulative messages and half apologies that aren't really apologies. I need to focus on my life, on my education, on building my future that's now going to be completely independent of them. I'm in my studio now. It's Friday night. It's like 11, and I'm writing this while drinking a cold coffee I bought hours ago. My bank account still has the $37,000. Actually, I have a bit more now because I kept saving. I'm going to start researching more seriously about starting my business. Maybe a tech services company for small businesses, something I can manage while I finish college. I'm going to use that money exactly for what I saved it for my future, to build something of my own. Do I feel bad about how things turned out? Yes, obviously. They're my family, and I always thought we'd be together, despite everything. Do I regret refusing to give them the money? No, not at all. It was the right decision, and I knew it then, and I know it now. Sometimes you have to choose yourself, especially when nobody else is going to. and that's what I did. My therapist, yes. I started therapy 2 weeks ago because all this affected me more than I want to admit. I says that setting boundaries doesn't make me selfish. It makes me healthy, and I'm trying to believe her. I don't know what's going to happen with my relationship with my parents and Jason long term. Maybe someday they can admit they were wrong and we can have some kind of relationship. Maybe not. For now, I'm focusing on me, on my goals, on building the life I want without depending on anyone else. I'm 19 years old. I live alone, work 2 jobs, study full-time, and I have a plan for my future. And honestly, despite all the pain and drama and loss of my family, I feel more in control of my life than I've ever felt.